How hard or easy does each Nightlord feel after spending 90 hours in Elden Ring Nightreign? Hey everyone, I am the Bonfire Keeper and welcome to my channel.
Nightreign has been out for over a month now, and on top of the 8 bosses we initially got, we are now also getting supercharged Everdark variants of the bosses, which are way harder. After spending 90 hours in this game, I'm going to rank them in this video in order of how difficult each of the Nightlord is, and along with the 2 Everdark variants we have gotten so far. Of course, difficulty is perspective based, and not everyone is going to feel the same about every bosses. So if you have a different opinion, let me know in the comments. I would love to read about it.
Number 10. Gaping Jaw. I don't think it's a very unpopular opinion when I put the base Adel at the very end of this list. He was not particularly hard even when I first started the game. His grab attack is very easy to dodge, and unless you are playing a squishy character like Revenant or Recluse, it doesn't even do that much damage if you choose any damage negation buff along the way. And even if you or your teammates gets grabbed by him, it is also possible to knock them out of it with enough damage. It is also pretty easy to get a status effect on him, get some frost or poison on him, and the boss fight is almost over. His second phase is not very challenging either. If you don't get caught in the lightning AoE attack, none of the other attacks are anything particular to worry about. He has a good design, otherwise this fight doesn't have anything that makes it really stand out. Number 9. Tricephalos. Gladius is a good boss, but not super different movement wise when it comes to the other dog-like bosses like the Red Wolf of Radagon, except being on hyper mode. He faces the challenge of being the very first and a mandatory boss of the game, hence having the obligation to not be super hard so everyone can actually progress and unlock the other bosses as well. He doesn't have any tricky or gimmicky move or any AoE attack that you need to particularly look out for, while him splitting into 3 separate dogs and aggroing onto one player can feel a little challenging. The aggro doesn't really stay more than 5 seconds, so it's nothing noteworthy either. I think Gladius can feel hard at first when you are new to the game and don't really know what you are doing, but after having a little experience, he doesn't really pose any challenge. Number 8. Augur. So Augur or Maurice is the boss that I had the most trouble managing throughout my first runs for the bosses. Yet I'm not putting him anywhere close to the top. It's because this fight is very gimmicky and it can feel hard at first, but once you figure out the gimmick, this fight is nothing but a pushover. See, the move that gave me the most trouble was when he curls up near the ground and builds up sleep on you, which I tried rolling on, running away, nothing worked. But the very simple thing I didn't try was to run towards him and smack him so hard that it knocks him out of it, which I learned after seeing my teammates, and after that this fight really didn't have much going for it. The nuke move can cause a little problem, but it also gives you enough time to run to another country. And I still think this fight is annoying because unless you are playing a ranged character, you still spend half of your time running after him because he just keeps flying away. And this is a fight I barely repeat unless I am not getting matched for any other fights. Number 7. Darkdrift Knight. My opinion on Fulgur might be different than others. I know a lot of people struggled with him, but I really had a lot easier time with him than the upcoming bosses on this list. I generally do better with humanoid bosses. While he is a centaur, still he is the closest thing we have to a humanoid boss, except the final boss of course. This is also the point on this list in my opinion where I see the FromSoft magic with these bosses, having really good design accompanied by a really good fight. I felt Fulgur was very well balanced, his attacks are very well telegraphed. His second phase is also very manageable, having new attacks but not suddenly upping the difficulty too much. You feel a well maintained pace throughout the whole fight. Fulgur would hit you like a truck but would also give you enough to read his moves and dodge them in time without any gimmicks. Number 6. Fissure in the Fog. Caligo is the first proper dragon Nightlord that we face. While technically Adel is also a dragon, he doesn't really feel like a proper FromSoft dragon fight. Caligo is a weird one to consider because he can be either hard or easy depending on what you are playing. He feels challenging with a melee build, with him constantly building up frost near him that you always take damage trying to get too close to him. But with a ranged character like Ironeye, you can just spam from a distance and be safe from most if not all of his attacks. Due to his size, he doesn't suddenly come up to your face and all his long range attacks are very easily dodgeable. But with a melee character it can be pretty challenging to not get frosted when trying to attack him with him constantly breathing ice storms. And if we talk about how he is as a dragon fight, I think while he is certainly not any Midir or Bale, he does feel a lot different and refreshing than the other hundreds of ancient dragon fights we have in the base game. And he does deserve recognition for that. Number 5. Sentient Pest. Sentient Pest, being the only duo boss Nightlord, definitely deserves his position as one of the hardest bosses in the game. Both bosses are very different from each other, having very different attacks and identities, making them stand out in the plethora of duo bosses FromSoft has. And unless you have a ranged character pulling aggro from the moth while you focus on the scorpion, it can become a really big problem. Because if you just keep focusing on the scorpion because the moth is out of your reach, it would shower you with poison, which not only poisons you but also hurts if you stay in the smoke, which is very easy to roll into when you are trying to dodge the scorpion charging at you. But once the fight gets into the second phase, I think the fight actually gets easier, with both the scorpion and the moth staying together. Now you don't have to pay attention to two separate bosses, making dodging their attacks a lot better than the first phase. I think this fight, making it important to have both melee and range characters in your team, makes this fight unique and makes it take a higher place in this list. Number 4. Equilibrious Beast. Libra is hands down the most unique boss in Nightreign, both design wise and combat wise. He already sets himself apart from the moment you enter his arena, with the fight not starting immediately but having you choose if you want a power up but sacrifice something in return or not. And I feel complete opposite with Libra as a field boss too, because unlike other Nightlords like Augur or Sentient Pest who can spawn as a weaker field boss, I find field boss Libra way harder than actual Nightlord Libra. I have made the mistake of attacking him in the field instead of taking a good upgrade, but his field version feels way too overtuned for me. Nightlord Libra might not be my favorite boss fight in the game, but I do appreciate how crazy this boss is, with him moving too fast and keeping you on your toes, having really fast range attacks and being aware of the madness build-up. He feels a lot more manageable with having a ranged character constantly putting damage in without being at the risk of getting madness, so I have a lot better time with him with Ironeye or Recluse than any other melee character. This is definitely one of the most technical fight in the game. Number 3. Night Aspect. I love the fact that how literally everyone, the moment they land a hit on Hjolstor's first phase, was like, yup, there's definitely a second phase. FromSoft is not fooling anyone. And with the tradition of FromSoft final bosses being broken, tired looking humanoid beings with the moves of already familiar bosses like Soul of Cinder in Dark Souls 3 having a moveset of Gwyn from Dark Souls 1, Hjolstor follows the same path, with his second phase being an RNG on him copying any of the other 7 Nightlords powers. It makes every time you face him pretty unique, because each run would feel different with him pulling out a new power each time. And on top of this fight being extremely cinematic, with him literally splitting reality open, Hjolstor having a moveset that resembles Artorias, one of my favorite Souls bosses of all time, easily makes him my favorite fight in the game. And my first few runs with him actually went really well because I succeeded in all of them, including my very first one. But I put him on top of the base bosses because his second phase is also one of the few times I realized how much being over level 12 matters. Because on all of my runs at first that I succeeded in, I was level 14 or 15 and playing a character like Radar with tons of health. But when I was playing Recluse and I could only reach level 10 or 11, I had a really hard time with him, because at any moment he could just zoom into my face and one-shot me, and if my teammates were down, it was really hard to revive them as a squishy character as well. He is a very fulfilling and deserving final boss fight. Number 2. Everdark Darkdrift Knight. Not even a month passes before FromSoft surprises us with new content for this game with the weekly harder boss releases. Between the two we have got so far, I definitely think Everdark Fulgur is the easier one. While he starts in his base form phase 2 and gets a lot of new moves added to him like the arrow rain or the twin blade or the shooting missile from the sky, he still remains very manageable and consistent the whole fight. I think it shows how much of a well-designed boss he is, and despite the difficulty being upped, the fight doesn't feel unfair at any moment. And on all my runs with him, I might not have succeeded in all of them, but I've always got pretty close to like having only 10% of his health left. And while I am placing him above the base game bosses, he still remains pretty close to the base game bosses difficulty wise, which I cannot see the same for the next one. Number 1. Everdark Gaping. Adel goes from the easiest boss in the whole game to the hardest boss in the whole game with his Everdark variant. Everdark Adel feels like he got injected with a lot of caffeine and it gave him extreme zoom in with how he barely spends 1 second in an area. He is a lot faster and does a lot more damage with his attacks, and the sudden burst of electricity around him adds a new challenge to it. But the phase 2 takes this fight to a whole other level. First of all, hope you're not epileptic with how he teleports around the map with flashing lights, and then the tornado mechanic comes into play, and it took me an embarrassing amount of times to realize there was a spirit jump that you can take to quickly get inside the tornado, and you don't have to keep taking damage staying outside for longer and trying to run towards it. And it also makes it hard to focus with the tornado, the flashing lights and everything else. Now this is not to say that this was a bad fight. I did really enjoy it a lot, but I would have also preferred if I could actually see what was happening half of the time. So this fight is definitely the hardest fight in the game so far, until we get other Everdark bosses that surpasses Adel.
It's always fun to see people experiencing these bosses in different ways. I have seen people have absolutely no issues with bosses I have struggled with, like Augur or Sentient Pest. Then I have also had a smooth time with bosses like Libra or Darkdrift Knight, which I have seen other people struggling with. I've never really thought I would enjoy this game so much, but now I cannot wait for the upcoming Everdark bosses. And with the DLC being confirmed, I also cannot wait to see the bosses or the nightmares the future beholds. But that's it for me today. If you enjoyed hearing about my experience with these bosses, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and I will see you next time.